Believe it or not, this guy could help you beat Spider 25. What is going on, Raiders? Soda Dragon here, coming at you with a few budget teams to help you beat Spider 25. So I'm going to show you guys 3 teams, and the first one up has Hatchet Slinger here. So Hatchet Slinger here is going to function as our Spiderling tank. Notice his bad affinity, plus he's only a 3-star, and a level 1 will work too. He's not ascended and he's barely geared. What does that mean? The Spiderlings will attack him mercilessly. But will they be able to kill him? No, because he has a 2-turn unkillable that he can cast on himself. Plus he gets his cooldowns reduced by Renegade, so he can cast that again immediately if he needs to. So Hatchet Slinger is our Spiderling bait that they cannot resist. We have Mordecai in here for the AoE HP burn, so he's going to be doing the majority of the damage to everybody, but especially against that main spider. We have 2 Coldhearts as well. They're going to decrease turn meter on that main spider, plus they're going to do their enemy max HP damage. Even with the cap, they are still very, very good to use against this boss. And lastly, we got Renegade here coming in and reducing everyone's cooldowns, enough that those Coldhearts will be able to use 2 Heart Seekers before the boss gets even 1 turn. So this would be considered a full turn meter control team against the boss. The boss is not even taking 1 turn. Now against the Spiderlings, we don't care if they take turns, but against the boss, we don't even want the boss to take 1 turn, because that means healing for the boss that we need to chip down again with more damage. So if the boss takes no turns, all the better. So at the end, I'm going to go over everyone's gear stats and masteries, but for now, make sure to keep your Hatchet Slinger rank 3 unascended. When they're rank 3, that means they're more likely to be targeted. Plus, when they're unascended, that means they're more likely to be targeted too. Plus, if you ascend him, you activate his passive here, which gives him a chance to counterattack, which adds more time to your run. So you do not want to ascend your Hatchet Slinger. Keep him rank 3 unascended. Next issue is the books. Now, technically, you do not have to book your Hatchet Slinger at all. But it's safer if you do want to book your Hatchet Slinger, especially this A2 here. Book it all the way down to a 4-turn cooldown, especially if you're using him without the Cold Hearts. I'm going to show you a comp later that you can use him without any Cold Hearts on the team, but you're going to need this cooldown for the A3 fully booked. If you have Cold Hearts, you can try to use him unbooked, but I definitely recommend without Cold Heart that you book up the A2 here all the way. So just to reiterate, if you're using Hatchet Slinger here without any Cold Hearts, then it's best to book that A2 all the way out. Use as many books as you have to until you get that A2 fully booked out. But if you are using Hatchet Slinger with 2 Cold Hearts, then you can try to go without any books. And most of the time it should work. So for this particular setup, you do not need Mordecai. You are going to need those Cold Hearts though. And once again, I will show you a team comp later that does not utilize any Cold Hearts. But this particular one, yeah, you're going to need Cold Hearts geared like I'm going to show you. But Mordecai is not required. All you need is an AoE HP burner. So Akoth will do, Tyrant Ixlamore is fine, Venus is fine. Any AoE HP burner will function in Mordecai's role. Onto the skill instructions. So for Mordecai, go ahead and leave him default. For Renegade here, turn on Sacrificial Ritual as your number 1. For Hatchet Slinger, turn on Dwarven Fortitude as number 1. For Coldheart here, make sure to turn off Art of Pain. We don't want to do any extra damage to the Spiderlings. We want to keep them alive as long as possible so they can HP burn that main spider as much as possible. And put Heart Seeker as number 1 as well. Same thing for the other Coldheart. Alright guys, so this is a full auto run, nothing to touch, and it should take a little bit over a minute to complete. Really good considering we're running with 4 rares and an epic for Spider 25. Next up, guys, we're switching around a few characters, but this functions 100% exactly the same. So I did mention earlier that any HP burner would do. That's why I switched out the HP burner. So instead of Mordecai, we have Akoth here. And the thing is, Akoth's HP burn is on a 3-turn cooldown, whereas Mordecai's booked is on a 4-turn cooldown. But you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm telling you guys, it doesn't matter. Just get an AoE HP burner in there. Next up, guys, we have switched out Hatchet, Slinger for Gnarlhorn here, but they do the same thing. So a lot of what I mentioned about Hatchet Slinger applies here. So Gnarlhorn here is a bad affinity against the boss. That's good. It's going to attract the attacks of those spiderlings. Plus, we're going to keep him rank 3 to further attract those spiderlings. And we're going to gear him really poorly, once again, to make him a great target for those spiderlings. Irresistible. So similar to Hatchet Slinger, if you're running Gnarlhorn with 2 cold hearts, it may not even be necessary to book him out at all. Now, if you want to be on the safe side with those cold hearts, or if you're running Gnarlhorn without any cold hearts at all, then I would recommend at least putting 1 book into this A3 to make it a 4-turn cooldown. So once again, the non-cold heart teams will require you to get at least 1 book into this A3. Onto the skill instructions. So for Akoth here, make sure to turn off Pyretic Release. It's just an AoE that does damage, and we don't want to do any more damage than the HP burn does to those spiderlings. We want to keep them alive as long as possible, and Pyroclasm is going to be your number 1 here. Renegade, just default. Gnarlhorn here, put on Determined as number 1. Cold Heart, turn off Art of Pain, and Heart Seeker is going to be number 1 for both the cold hearts. So this team is full auto just like the first comp, and you should get similar times, a little bit over a minute. Alright guys, last up is the non-cold heart team. So the rest of the team functions the same. You have an AoE HP burner, plus you have Renegade to reduce everyone's cooldowns, and you have either Gnarlhorn or Hatchet Slinger to attract and draw the attacks of those spiderlings. So Ursine, Ironhide, and Vizix aren't necessarily the best turn meter reducers, but they're just examples. You could really pick anybody. I don't know who's on your account, but figure out who in your account are the best turn meter reducers and put 2 of them on your team. Just a word of caution when using Armiger here. He's going to make your runs a little inconsistent because he's a bad affinity and he can weak hit against the boss, which means he's not going to turn meter reduce at all. Now, can he still work? He can, but it's going to be inconsistent. Ideally, you want turn meter reducers that are not a bad affinity to the boss. So the big difference between a team like this and the double cold heart team is the double cold heart team is a full turn meter reduction team. The boss is not even taking 1 turn. Whereas in this, the boss is taking a few turns. So this would be a partial turn meter control team. So Hatchet Slinger for this comp is going to need to have his A2 booked out all the way. Hatchet Slinger is going to need to have that unkillable up for 4 turns back to back. No breaks in between. So when he does his unkillable for 2 turns and it's a book 4-turn cooldown, and Renegade comes in and reduces his cooldown by 2, all of a sudden when those 2 unkillable turns are up, he's free to cast it right again. So he gets those 4 turns of straight unkillable. So same thing with Gnarlhorn, you're going to need to have 4 turns of uninterrupted unkillable. Now he casts it on himself for 2 turns, but he does have some cooldowns. But when you book this at least once, just 1 book in this A3, all of a sudden he has a 4-turn cooldown. Renegade chops off 2 of those turns of that cooldown. All of a sudden he can cast it right again after that first unkillable wears off. So guys, this comp is going to take a lot longer since we don't have those cold hearts, so a little bit over 3 minutes. Plus, this comp is not as reliable as the double cold heart comp. Now, is this still a pretty reliable comp? Yes, it is. Most of the time, it will work, but it's not as reliable. So definitely, if you have the cold hearts, that double cold heart comp is not only the fastest, but it's the most reliable. So regarding the HP burner, the same thing applies that I said about the other teams. Any AoE HP burner will do. Onto the skill instructions. So for Akoth, make sure to turn off the A3 here. Pyretic Release and Pyroclasm is going to be number 1. For Renegade, it's just default. Hatchet Slinger, turn Dwarven Fortitude to number 1. Ursine Ironhide is just default. And for Vizix the Unbowed, make sure to just turn off all her other skills except for that A1. So single combat and sinister allies. All we want her to use is her A1 because that's her only move that decreases turn meter. So for this kind of comp, people are going to die. Just expect it. Probably 2 or 3 people will be left standing by the end of the run. But yeah, people start dying. That's normal. It's okay. And this is full auto just like the other teams. Alright guys, on to everyone's gear stats and mastery, starting with Hatchet Slinger here. So how have I geared him? In 2 speed sets. All I care about is his speed. That is all. And all I care about the speed is that it is over 150. So all you need is 151 speed. That is it. Gear him as little as possible to get that speed. Remember, keep him rank 3 and do not ascend him. On to his total stats. So here we're seeing a speed of 152. Good, because we need over 150 speed. Why? Because the speed of the Spiderlings is 150. So we need to be faster than them in order to cast that unkillable before they start attacking him. So 151, 152, whatever. Anything over 150 will do. So as far as the books go, if you're using a double Coldheart team, then you might not need to book them out at all. Though it would probably be safer to use as many books as you need until this A2 is completely booked out. Even for a double Coldheart team, this is probably more consistent. But you can probably get away without booking him at all for those double Coldheart teams. Now, if you're not running a double Coldheart comp, then yes, use as many books as you need until this A2 is completely booked out. Onto his masteries, and I have none. They're not needed. Gnarlhorn here is basically set up the same as our Hatchet Slinger, so make sure not to ascend him, not to rank him up, and gear him as little as possible to meet that 150 plus speed threshold. So if you're running your Gnarlhorn for a double Coldheart team, you might not need to book him at all, though it might be safer and more consistent if you put at least one book into this A3. But if you're running a team with no Coldhearts at all, then yes, you're gonna need to put at least one book into this A3. You don't need any more than that. And same thing with Hatchet Slinger, no masteries needed. Next up, guys, is Renegade. Now, do you have to have your Renegade at rank 6, level 60? No, you don't. I would say experiment. Try rank 4, level 40, and rank 5, level 50. See if that's good enough to get those Spiderlings to attack your Gnarlhorn or Hatchet Slinger instead of your Renegade. On to our total stats. So really the stat that we care about, just like our Gnarlhorn and our Hatchet Slinger, is her speed. And what speed do we want? To be the slowest on the team. Typically, your Hatchet Slinger or your Gnarlhorn is already going to be almost the slowest on your team at 151 or 152 speed. So we need a speed that's slower than that. So here you're seeing a speed of 112. That's perfectly fine. Anything to be the slowest member of the team. Well, what about the books? So if we're talking a double Coldheart team, then your Renegade does not need any books, period. But if we're talking a non-double Coldheart team, then use as many books as you need to book out this A3 here. And for your Renegade, no masteries needed. Next up, guys, we've got Mordecai. So how have I geared him? I have him in a speed set and a regeneration set. Onto his total stats. So I have his HP at 40,000. I have the attack at 2,300, defense at 2,200, speed 203, crit rate 41%, crit damage 108%, resist 274, and accuracy 166. As far as books, you can experiment, but I would recommend trying to book out this A3. Onto his masteries. So down the offense tree here, we do have War Master, so we're getting bonus damage based off enemy max HP. And down the support tree here, we do have lasting gifts, so his increased attack buff, we're potentially extending it by one more turn. And we do have Master Hexer here, so those HP burns, we're potentially extending them by one turn as well. Next up, guys, got Akoth the Seared. So how have I geared him? I have him in 3 immortal sets. Onto his total stats. So I have his HP at 55,000. I have the attack at 2,100, defense at 2,900, speed 215, crit rate 26%, crit damage 100%, resist 190, and accuracy 362. Your Akoth does not need to be booked for Spider 25 because this Pyroclasm here, the AoE HP burn, is already on a 3-turn cooldown. In fact, if you're strictly using Akoth for the Spider, it may actually be a better choice to not book him. That's usually not the case, but when you don't book him, this A2 here actually does less damage, keeping those Spiderlings alive longer to HP burn the main Spider. Onto his masteries. So down the offense tree here, we do have War Master, so we are getting bonus damage based off enemy max HP, really good for bosses. And down the support tree, we do have Sniper, so we are increasing the chances of him landing his debuffs by 5%. And here we do have Master Hexer, so we are potentially extending the duration of his debuffs by 1 turn. Onto the Coldhearts. Since I have them geared similarly, I'm just going to show you one of them. I have her geared in a Savage set and a crit damage set. Onto her total stats. So I have her HP at 30,000, I have the attack at 2,600, defense 1,700, speed 166, crit rate 81%, crit damage 260%, resist 110, and accuracy 343. Onto her masteries. So down the offense tree here, we do have Flawless Execution, so we're getting plus 20 crit damage. And down the support tree here, we do have Evil Eye, so we are reducing the turn meter on the first hit of each enemy with our A1. And here as well, we have Master Hexer, so we're potentially extending the duration of her debuffs by 1 turn. Next up, guys, we've got our 2 turn meter reducing substitutes for our Coldhearts. Remember, these were chosen really at random. They aren't specifically built for the Spider's Den. But just in case you want to see what gear I have on Ursine here and on Vizix, we're going to start with Ursine. And what does he have? He is in a stun set and a perception set. Onto his total stats. So I have his HP at 37,000. I have the attack at 2,000. Defense 4,100, speed 183, crit rate 93%, crit damage 102%, resist 242, and accuracy 201. Onto his masteries. So down the offense tree here, we do have War Master, so we're getting bonus damage based off enemy max HP. And down the support tree here, we do have Spirit Haste, so when an ally dies, we're getting a speed boost. And we do have Master Hexer here, so we are potentially extending the duration of his debuffs. Lastly guys, here is Vizix. So how have I geared her? I have her in a Relentless set and an Immortal set. Onto her total stats. So I have her HP at 52,000, I have the attack at 1800, defense at 3600, speed at 212, crit rate 103, crit damage 121, resist 328, and accuracy 201. Onto our masteries. So down the offense tree here, we do have War Master, so we're getting bonus damage based off enemy max HP. And down the defense tree here, we do have Retribution, so she has a chance to counter attack with her A1 when she takes a big hit. And we also have Deterrence as well, so if an enemy CCs an ally of yours, then you have a chance with Vizix to rush in with that A1 and attack the attacker. Alright guys, that's it for today. I hope this information helps you out in beating Spider 25. Lastly, I know what some of you guys are saying. I don't have any Coldhearts, I don't have Renegade, I don't have Gnarlhorn, I don't have Hatchet Slinger. Is there any hope for me to beat Spider 25? Yes, there is, and it doesn't require any legendaries, so keep an eye out for the video. And if you guys haven't yet, like, subscribe, and share. Turn on all notifications. Stay safe, and I will see you guys in the next video.